Hey, hey, hey.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hey everyone, how you doing?
I'm
I'm
doing well. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good over here. How about you, Antoine?
I'm fabulous. Fabulous.
That's
Ready to
good.
jump on in and have this conversation.
All
Okay,
right.
as usual, we want to welcome everybody to this week's episode of Healing Help Desk. We are still in our Trauma from Everyday Encounters series, and the topic of tonight's conversation is one that is super duper complex, and we are absolutely certain that we're going to need to have more than one conversation to unpack what may or may not be going on here. So, we are unpacking intimacy when sex isn't the goal, and it is sparked by a question from one of our viewers. I'm gonna get the question up. And I apologize, y'all are gonna have to see me going back and forth. My notes are not, my iPad is not here with me, which is where I usually keep my notes. So I'm gonna have to go back and forth. But let's get into it. Uh, the question from our viewers for us is, hey, heal and help, what do you call someone who craves deep emotional intimacy and companionship but not sex? I identify as a heterosexual woman, but lately I realize the sex of the person doesn't matter as much as the connection we share. I still want relationships, closeness, and love, but I'm not interested in sex. I can take it or leave it. What makes people feel this way, and how do I navigate it without feeling broken or misunderstood?
Yes.
Yes,
Uh,
That's
that's a good
heavy.
one.
that
That's
is it.
heavy. And I'll share just a little bit, a little bit more insight. I had a one-on-one session with this young lady, and it's not even that she no longer desires sex with the opposite sex. So it's not like she's saying, I no longer want to have enjoy or have a desire to have sex with men. What she
Right.
said to me was the description of what she hears when people describe sex and how great it is and how wonderful it is. She has never in her adult life, and she's in her early 30s, she has never in her adult life experienced or had an experience with her partners that match what it is she's has in her mind and has been hearing
Hmm.
with her ears. It just never measures up. She has the desire for sex in totality is just not there. And when she does do it, it's under coercion, either advertently or inadvertently, or she does it out of obligation to her partner, but the enjoyment for her is not there and she could take it or leave it. But she absolutely wants to be in a relationship. She absolutely wants connection, closeness, intimacy, non-sex intimacy. And how does she
Right.
navigate that? So much so that she met someone who happens to be of the same sex, and they have a very close, intimate relationship. And she's not sexually attracted to this person either, but she feels love, she feels seen, she feels protected, and she is open to the idea of this turning into a full-blown relationship because she has and has been looking for in relationships. She feels it in this relationship.
Wow,
So,
that's a great question. And I know that she's not alone. So one thing she needs to know that she's not alone in the this type of feeling. There are people out there that feel similar ways. You know, they're not being fulfilled in that aspect.
Hmm.
Um, I think that first of all, it's very courageous to step up to the plate and ask questions like this, and be
yeah,
vocal about what's going on with you, and that's a great thing. It's it's healthy to start talking about these things and what's going on, and to get assistance with dealing with things. A lot of times we just suppress, and then we find out we explode all over the place, and it could be on something that really isn't the issue, but now it becomes a major issue because we didn't handle it the correct way. And so I hope our viewers can understand this and get this, that the more we speak out about what's going on to the right people, and talk to the right people and let them know, somebody that you can trust with your heart, right? They have to be responsible enough to for you to share this with them, and you can trust them that they won't use it against you. But you need to find somebody like that, and be able to share with that. If not, somebody like a therapist, or the Healing Help Desk definitely is a place where you can go, and adrulix.com as well. So finding community, finding a safe space where you can share what's going on in your heart is absolutely necessary for us to continue to grow as a person and handle the things correctly that's going on in our lives.
Totally, I understand that. That's 'cause that's the truth. Um, and just from uh Jay just saying this is what the callers have, what, because I was reading over the question again. So what do you call someone who craves deep emotional intimacy and companionship? Well, the starters, I don't want to put a label on that. You know what I mean? It's because I think for me, just reading that, it seems like, as we are all humans and we always want to have something as a label to understand, if I'm not mistaken. It's like, hey, once we can call it this, we can somewhat categorize and understand in our mind and all that. So for that part, I don't know what to really call it.
Human.
But yeah, just being human, that's really it.
Yeah,
Just no,
that
there's
part.
no like, yeah, there's no certain label. You're just being human. And but to also recognize the feelings that she's having, just like that, not having that connection there. I think that is something that is going on with a lot of people in this world, especially when it comes to like either finding
Mm,
someone, dating, or just marriages. Because I don't know where the shift is at the moment, because I'm dealing with stuff like that myself. So I can throw myself in there. It's like
right.
finding that emotional connection first, because that's what some people look for. Like, they're looking for how can you stimulate, almost like, how can you stimulate me mentally, and what kind of bond can we have over conversation, instead of just running toward just having sex. So that's something I have noticed and been hearing from a lot of my peers. Like, hey, they're looking for somebody like that. Can you stimulate me mentally, emotionally, and be supportive in all those areas? And it's kind of like, once that connection is made, then everything else kind of like flows. But that's just what I'm
Hmm.
kind of grasping right now. But I got some more thoughts later on.
That's good.
That is good. And we gotta think about, so when we're saying, "Can you stimulate me?" We're not talking about the extreme of looking for someone to externally meet all of our needs. We understand
Mhm.
that it's our responsibility to meet our own needs. It's our responsibility to create our own happiness. So we're not talking about that. We're talking about being connected and being vulnerable with one another, being able to, quote unquote, if you will, be naked. And we're not talking about with clothing, be your
Correct.
authentic self, show up as who you actually are in front of another person. And many of us, if not most of us, don't feel safe doing that. I would say, especially in a time like now when we're in cancel culture,
Hmm.
and social media plays such a big part in how others see us, but also how we see ourselves through those others or the lenses of others, right? So being able to have those deep, intimate, authentic relationships or connections, I feel you're right, Joe, is difficult for most people nowadays. And I think it has been on some level throughout time. You know, people have suffered with finding it difficult to be intimate. And sex is the sex via intimacy via sex to me is the easy part.
Yes.
It doesn't really require much in the sense of being willing to open your heart, being willing to show yourself, because people will have sex based on the external, the aesthetics of a person. So it's a superficial connection,
Hmm.
if you will. And then once the sex is over, there's still that longing for something more. And unfortunately, a lot of times we think that the something more is more sex. And especially with some people, the time frame in which sex is occurring in those moments may be the only time that you feel loved, because you are naked and you are connected and you are doing intimate things. And in that moment, you may feel loved, even though it's not necessarily love, right? And when that act is over, that feeling is gone. So it's kind of like you're like a drug. You're chasing that. It's not a high, but it's the feeling of love. And I'm not saying that that's the case with our viewer. I'm saying that that is the case for some people. But what we didn't do, if we could take a pause right here, gentlemen, we forgot to tell them who we were. We were so excited about jumping into the topic. I'm Jay the Heal Chemist with HEALn.help. That is our website address, and there's a plethora of services there for you to get in contact with us, find out what we got going on, tap into our resources and things of that nature. I'm passing it to Joe.
I'm
And
Joe DeRoe, the researcher, the man with many hats. I'm also with Healing.help. And check out our website too, because we have, like Jay said, we have plenty of resources out there and we're constantly building. Pass it over to you, Antoine.
Yes, I'm just Antoine. Excited to be here once again with the Drulix, and you can find us on drulix.com. And we're locked in to really answer some questions and work through some things together, so that we can be a healthy society. If and I believe that's possible, but it takes intentionality, and so that's why we are here. That's why this podcast is going forward, and it's going to continue to grow and shine.
absolutely. And you know, the subject today is real, it's raw, and you know, I want to applaud our viewer for even being willing to dig in and say what's happening here. And I'm being honest with myself, because a lot of times when we don't uh, feel the things that are quote unquote considered the norm, or we feel that we'll be judged, especially by our loved ones, with feeling different and wanting to explore life based on what resonates with us on a deep level, we will deny what we are thinking and feeling. We will lie to ourselves. We will gaslight ourselves. You know, we'll live in cognizance dissonance. You know, we will just detach or attempt to detach, and then we'll do things to try to push this thing down that will never go away. So I just want to applaud you for even being willing and brave enough to explore this topic, and to be willing to reach out to somebody and say, hey, can you help me, um, can you help me unpack this? And you know, Joe, you were saying that you didn't you don't you like we don't really have to give it a title, and I
Right.
don't think that a title is necessary. But I do want to say that there are quote unquote names for certain feelings with regard to this topic. And I feel like when we explore the language of that, it helps us not to feel isolated. And I feel like just saying, this may or may not be what you're experiencing, but here are some terms that may resonate with you, an explanation of the terms that may resonate with you. And if you'd like to have continuing sessions with me to unpack, we can definitely do that. If you would like to seek out a therapist for a more deep dive from a clinical standpoint with regard to some of these terms, by all means, we suggest doing that, because as you know, we are not licensed therapists, so we're not giving therapy and we are not giving diagnosis. But I will tell you some of the terms that, based on what I know, are likened to what you've described. And asexual is one of those terms. And that really is basically you experience little to no sexual attraction, which is what you've expressed during our conversation. There's also a term called demisexual, where attraction builds only after there is a deep emotional connection. There is what's called panromantic, and that means emotionally you are attracted to people regardless of gender. And so, you could also just say, I want closeness without sex, and I don't want a label, and I don't want a term associated with it. And that too is valid. But I don't feel like you're as confused as you may think you are. You're just being honest with yourself and with what your spirit is truly saying you desire, and helping get information and support around that is huge. I feel like we've been programmed to believe that sex is the ultimate form of connection. And and it's not that it's not, but it's not the only form of connection. Sex, just the act of sex, can be a number of different things, right? You
Yes.
can you can make love, because a lot of people differentiate sex and making love, even though the act is the same. There is usually an insinuation that there is a different type of connection when you're making love as opposed to having sex. I personally am one person that kind of uses the differentiating that term as a differentiator. So if I'm making love, this is someone that I'm in a relationship with. This is someone that I love, that I have connection with, that I am not only experiencing the physical intimacy of the relationship, but other intimate things, and up to and including having children from that making love.
Makes sense. Makes sense. One of the things that I would like to chime in on is that always, always ask yourself, what are you looking for, right? What do you want in a relationship? And it's good to find somebody that you can talk to about this and kind of unpack it with. It's, to be like a sounding board. um, and so it's because that's when we have a clear understanding of who we are, which takes time, and it also takes some solitude, right?
Yeah.
Um, and
Yes.
when we start doing that, then we can gain clarity about how we really feel and what we really want, right? And that can come in different forms and things of that nature, but you know it because you said, okay, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the intimacy. I'm looking for the safety. I'm looking for this, that, and the other. And so when you find that, it doesn't necessarily say, hey, now it's time to have sex. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so it doesn't necessarily have to say that. Now, where I understand some people do it out of obligation or wanting to please the mate that they're with, and that's good. That's okay, or I should say. However, you want to be able to trust the person, right? They have to be trustworthy for that type of intimacy, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're getting the other things from them, I think that kind of validates that trust system, that if you wanted to go that route of the intimacy, of course, you definitely you definitely can. Of course, sex before marriage, it can cause some other things to happen. Feelings start going all over the place, right? So it can cause some complications, especially when you're not ready for those type of things, right? So it's always good to be ready, know what you're doing, what's going on. If you're really wanting to establish a long-term relationship with this person, um, that's when y'all need to have a conversation. I think the conversation is crucial, right? If this person is a potential candidate, so to speak, or this person is checking off some of the boxes of how you want to, making you safe, making is hearing you out, right? Y'all have a good communication, transport, I don't not transport, but communication is well. So then there's a form of intimacy there. Then have a conversation and say, hey, you know what? This is what has been my experience in sex. So I may not, I don't. I'm not really enthused about going there. However, our relationship is evolving, and that may happen one day, or let's talk about that. Let's have a conversation about that.
Right. And
Yeah.
go ahead. I'm sorry, Joe.
Oh no, that's yeah, go ahead. I'll wait till you're done because I'm getting my what I want to say together.
Okay. I really was gonna say, the other part of the question is what makes people feel this way? Like, why would somebody? I think part of the question too is she's trying to understand why she feels that way, and just based on the conversation that we had, I can highlight quite a few different things that would be the perfect storm of her experience that's supporting why she feels that way, right? But let's speak hypothetically. I don't want to dive into her personal session with some of the things that she shared, but hypothetically, it's sometimes trauma that will make you um, disconnect or have a desire to disconnect physically, sexually, and in some instances, emotionally. And it's caused a disconnect between intimacy and physical touch. Sometimes it's something as simple as neurodivergence, things like ADHD and autism, where sensory overload or emotional bonding will override sometimes sexual desire. Um, so there are a number of different things. And for us to say, well, somebody would feel this way, and here's the reason why, it really is on a person by person basis. And it would really be you unpacking your story and your history, because it may not be one thing. It may be, like I said, the perfect storm. It may be a couple of things that have happened that now has shaped your subconscious or unconscious view of sex. But the human in you and your spirit still has this desire. There's a longing for connection. There's a longing for love. There's a longing for physical touch. And you recognize, because of the accumulation of experiences that you've had, that sex does not bring that feeling to the forefront. There's something else that you need to explore to bring that forward, and sex is now on the back burner because it doesn't bring what you actually really need. So it could just be that your soul knows what it needs tenderness, vulnerability, and safety, and not sex. So, and the biggest thing I want you to hear is that not wanting sex does not make you broken. Just know that there's nothing wrong with you. Okay, that is the one thing that I definitely want to send your way. And Joe, I'm going to let you kind of tap in with what you have.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm glad you said that about both things. That what could possibly uh make that disconnect emotionally is could be from trauma or things that happen either during a relationship, after a relationship, or way before a relationship. There's
Right.
so many things in life that could affect the person to be emotionally disconnected from, like I said, physical touch, like you named, was a good one, and just the whole art of having sex. But again, there's no problem, like you said, not wanting to have sex. There's no problem with that.
No.
And when you said about trauma and physical touch, that hit a home base with me because that was one of my issues, that I had growing up intimately. Is like I didn't want to be touched, and that was due
Hmm.
to a lot of trauma I was going through, and that has happened to me. It's like, yeah, you dap somebody up, give them a hug like that, whatever, it's all good. But when it
Right.
comes to, like I said, having that connection with somebody and that intimate physical touch, I wasn't there for it
Yeah.
because I was feeling too much trauma, not even from that person, just from what has happened to me in the past, made me like, hey, look, don't touch me. I'm good. Like I wasn't used to being touched, and a lot of
Oh.
people could see that from me, and that's why a majority of people like either just a handshake, dap, or whatever, or that was just for thing. And like instantly I was like, nah, I'm not ready. I'm not ready for that because I had so much stuff I had to unpack myself. And I will say definitely seeing a therapist to unpack all that and to go through that journey, because it's never an end point in healing yourself. But
Hmm.
when I took that journey for myself to take on therapy and just unpack all this past trauma of why would I feel like I don't want to be physically touched in a way? Why don't want to be touched like that? It's just I had to keep digging and digging to figure out like, oh shoot, this is the reason why.
Yeah.
So unpacking that through therapy allowed me to finally recognize the trauma behind all that, and then move forward with the plan action steps to, yeah, so what, oh, just overcome it and be like, you know what, I feel I'm comfortable, I'm good,
Do
I'm
you
in a safe place that I could say yes, I'm comfortable with that.
do you feel like keeping people from touching you or not wanting to be touched was your way of protecting yourself?
Yes.
That was your way of keeping being safe and keeping yourself safe until you determined what it was that you were dealing with and feeling.
Yes, and it was a way of me not also allowing anybody to, like I said, whether it be romantically or friendships, to get too
Yeah.
close to me.
Okay.
It was that wall that like, no, because I feel like at that point in time in my life when someone would get that close to me, I was in that mindset, okay, you either gonna do something to me, you're gonna dip out or whatever, and this bond that I
Mm,
have connected is broken, it's gone. And it's like, and how is that gonna leave me?
right.
Because most
So,
people don't realize that, yeah, you could sever a bond with somebody and you could be all fine and dandy and go here, but with that person that has a lot of trauma going on, and sometimes they don't really explain like this is what I've been through, that is another trauma piled up on top of that, and it's
hmm,
kind of like it kind of shakes up your world, and it kind of puts more walls up.
yeah.
So when I was saying earlier, like having that connection, someone to stimulate the mind and all that is, and you hit it right on the head. It's like having that emotional connection, that support, those deep conversations. I heard something from someone saying like, "Let me show you my universe, add you to it, so you can
Mm,
see who I am. This is what I do. This is what makes up me, and I
right.
can see yours as well." And sometimes that's a we have to be careful because that's could be just a one-way street. We could show them our universe and all that, and we don't even see what this person is made of. So when she's saying, when the viewer saying that, hey, I'm missing the connection, the emotional side, I get that because that plays a lot into someone opening up to the other
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that could also be why she's not feeling what she needs to feel because of past trauma that has happened, and so um, and it could be something totally different from sex. So we're not
Yeah.
saying that it has to
Hmm.
be something sexual that has happened that
Right.
has caused this not or this distaste or not a
Lack of
desire
desire.
non-desire
Yes,
to have sex. It doesn't have to be a sexually oriented thing that has caused this, but that could be
exactly.
the reason why the connections never made, right? And
Right.
then you also have to look at the people that you have been with as well and find out, what was it about them that possibly could have turned you off. It's like, yeah, I ain't no, I'm gonna,
Hmm.
I'll go this far, but I ain't really, feeling you all the way like that. So,
Yeah.
you know, and so like, that vulnerability, because you do really have to be vulnerable in that sense, if you really want to have a good time
Right.
in it, or experience the most out of it, in my opinion, anyway.
And I think you are spot on. And like you were saying, Antoine, and I'm so glad that you pointed out that the lack of desire for sex does not have to be related to a sexual trauma. It could be growing up, you didn't feel safe. You didn't feel love. You couldn't voice what it was you wanted because you would get, shut down or ignored or worse, criticized for it, right? Part of
Hmm.
being vulnerable with somebody, especially with regard to adding sex to the mix, would require you to be at least somewhat comfortable with doing some of those things. And if that has been the shutdown for you, then for you, those things don't enter the chat, if you will. And sex really becomes mechanical. It becomes a thing that you do and not something beautiful that you experience, not your way and in your mindset that I'm connecting with this person. I am sharing the most intimate and most precious part of myself with somebody who I feel connected enough with to do that with.
Hmm.
And it could also be as simple as, and going to what you were saying, Joe, how you grew up, right? And I had to learn that. That was something that I had to learn growing up because in my house, we are, not even in my house, in my family, we are super duper affectionate people, all of
Hmm.
us. So when we see each other, it's a hug, it's a kiss. When we part ways, I love you. When we talk, we tell each other and I mean like my cousins, my auntie, my grandma, my uncle, all of us, me, my children, we are all, because that's how we were raised. We raised our children like that. So we are touchy feelies. And everybody's not like that. And the first time I encountered somebody who was like, ew, I don't hug, I don't do all that. And I was like, what the heck is wrong with you? But what I found out is that was not something they did in their family growing up. They didn't hug. They weren't affectionate. They didn't tell each other they loved each other. It just wasn't a topic of conversation. So even being raised differently and having different levels of non-sexual intimacy in your nucleus, like in your family, can contribute to how you process that.
Yes.
That can
Oh yeah.
definitely contribute. Like, I'm not, she doesn't care that I say it. My sister in law, I legit have a picture of me and my husband hugging her, and she's like, ugh. Like she is a touch me not. He is very affectionate. I'm very affectionate. We're handsy people, and they grew up in the same household. It's just the two of them, and she is like, ew, don't keep your hands to yourself. I hug her every time I see her. I don't care. And she's like, here you go. And I'm like, shut up and just get this hug. You know what I mean? But it's the littlest, most simple things that can contribute to that. Things
Yes.
like that. Just a difference in upbringing can, contribute to that. And like I said, e- part of being able to, and I can't speak for men because men seem to be able to let go and enjoy sex no matter what. But women, and this goes to the confessions of women nowadays that say for many, many years and in many, many relationships, and for some in entire relationship, they've faked orgasms. Well, in order to achieve an orgasm, it's really, ladies, not his responsibility. Of course, there are certain things that he needs to do to be able to bring pleasure to your body. But if you can't let go here, it doesn't matter what he does. You're not going to allow yourself to be free enough to experience that. So, for you to be able to have the pleasure that you hear everybody else talking about, there has to be some work and some level of comfortability that you have to have within yourself to go there. And your partner does have something to do with that, in the sense that if you can't be that way, and I, full confession, I have been in relationship with some men that I just felt like I couldn't let go. I could not connect with them. I was in my head about it. And I was just like, yeah, no, not you. And where I would be with somebody else, not at the same time, because I'm not that type of girl, but in a different, different setting, different relationship, different connection. And it was easy for me to just go, okay, I can open myself completely up in this situation. So there is an aspect, or likely an aspect, because we did talk about some um, titles that we could give what you're experiencing. And the only way to determine what it may actually be for you is to unpack those things and dive a little bit deeper. But I'm just throwing out there that there are some other things that contribute to the fear of being 100% vulnerable, and thus in oftentimes, if not all the time, when you're not achieving the level of satisfaction sexually, there is a breakdown in the vulnerability,
Mhm.
especially when it comes to women. Just saying. Now, let me ask this. um, if you fellas were to build a relationship with sex not being on the table, number one, would that be something you would consider? And number two, how would you go about doing that? Oh,
That's
it's
a good
silent
question.
in the room.
No, it's I there's
Y'all quiet as a mouse, honey.
it's like hmm.
Look, I'm in here fanning. It's so quiet. I was like, well, I'm in the hot seat.
Well, I could say for me, as possibly building a relationship with no sex, it's all about the connection, because there's plenty of people out there in relationships, they don't have, we'll say, they don't have physical sex, but they have ways that they both are like, we're both satisfied. I
Hmm.
can't think, the words don't come to my mind at the moment. But it can be a relationship off that, but it all depends on the connection and the communication, and where both those individuals want to take that relationship. Like, I really do believe it's like that. You gotta communicate. This is what I want. This is what I want out of a relationship. This is what I'm presenting. This is how I am. And just finding someone who's also or close to that, and also maybe I say not compromise, the compromise word, not compromise, but
Well,
Compatible,
I think
compatible.
compromise could be a word to explain. Meet in the middle or meeting of the minds. I think compromise could be a word to describe it. But
yeah,
I think I
like
understand what you mean.
okay, yeah. So like have maybe have some type of compromise, like, hey, maybe do this or whatever, just so it's not if they find an individual that is okay with not having sex and maybe once out of blue moon or something, who knows, having that conversation, say, okay, well, once a year or something, twice a year, I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there because there could be some people out there like that, or maybe once a month, I don't
Right.
know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
just having some kind of compromise in the communication, I think it could work.
Yeah, with me, I think that it it should be it should be easy, right? However, with past, it's one thing. It's like if you never ate cake, cornbread would do.
I guess.
So look at that.
I guess. Maybe if it's Jiffy, Jiffy cornbread is sweet.
Having
Maybe.
eaten some good cake, then it's hard to refrain from eating it again.
Right. Right.
Um, and so, but just being mentally aware of where you are as an individual, what your needs are they, for lack of a better word, valid? And what I mean by valid, because your thoughts are valid in this and the other, but
Right. Right.
um, is it something that this other person can offer you or should offer you? Right? Are you looking for something that only you can get from it internally? Like you said earlier, happiness starts from within.
Right.
People can assist you and aid you, but if you don't have
Contribute.
no, wood, I'm a camper, so we when we make a campfire, it's called kindling. When what you start the fire with. If you don't have any of that on the inside of you, then it's hard to start that fire, right, of happiness. Um, and so, um, just being real honest with who you are, and started to say, what do I want? Can this person give this to me, or should they give this to me? Right?
Hmm.
Because sometimes we want
Hmm.
stuff that we shouldn't have, and or that person just not in the doesn't have it in their capacity to give, right?
Right.
And so there's a lot of different things that could be at play there, but communication with yourself, that isolation, that separation, that those questionings, and then also getting with others that you can trust with the information that you want to share, right? Um,
Yes.
and the questions that you have on your heart about yourself, like being vulnerable and talking to someone that you can trust is key. And sometimes people, go to people that they don't know, and be able to open up. Like I had a guy just talking to me today and all about stuff that was going on, and he was like, I don't know why I'm saying all this, but I knew,
I get that all
right?
the time.
Yeah, I knew. And so we were able to help him unpack some things and get some clarity on some situations. And so, um, yeah, just being aware of what's going on with you. You're not weird, um, but there are some answers that's within you that you need to tap into, right? And
Right.
sometimes we don't know what we don't know, and so we need some help unpacking those things.
That's right. And also, I want to
Definitely.
add, it could be, maybe it's not like a intimate relationship. Maybe just like a what they call it. This one I will say a label. Was it life companion?
Mm,
If I'm not mistaken. Um,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
that could be a situation there.
life companion has a couple of different meanings. Sometimes it's just somebody that you live with and you don't go the traditional route of marriage. So it can be used in a different number of different ways. But I get what you're saying. You're saying that, the relationship, the makeup of the relationship is the companionship.
Yes.
And so, with that said, let's say for me, so this is my 2 cents. My 2 cents is to unpack as much of the underlying factors that you feel contribute to why you feel the way you feel. And then start to work on some of those things, especially if you have found that there is a trauma or an experience that has marred you in the way of being able to see sex in a enjoyable light. And the feeling that you are searching for in your head that's not showing up physically, there are some ways that if you're saying, hey, sex for me would be on the table if I could experience this thing that I feel like it should be, right? The pleasure that I'm looking for, I would be open to sex if that is something that I can experience with sex. For me, the way you build that is to, number one, be radically honest, which I feel like you've already done. And when you meet someone, have and you are at a junction, because I'm not saying as soon as you meet them start telling them you don't want no sex and you just don't share too much too early. Right? But you can, once you're at the junction of feeling like, hey, what I'm needing in a relationship, the space that I need the relationship to create for me or allow for me is here. The connection is here. I see potential in this. Have some deep talks. Share touch that is non-sexual, hugs, cuddles. Honestly, this is um, how much we as a society are looking for that. So this is to say you're not the only one. There are legitimate places of businesses that people are paying others, and I'm considering doing it, to cuddle with them. People just
Hmm.
want to be held. They just want to feel the love, you know. So hugs, cuddles, being present emotionally, in other words, being able to put words to what it is you're feeling, and have a partnership without pressure. Don't even necessarily throw sex out there for quite some time, especially if the other person is not pushing it. If you find that they are bringing it up, that may be the opportunity to begin to have a conversation about where you stand from a standpoint of what you're looking for with regard to sex. But what you seek at this moment is intimacy, and determine whether or not that's something you can build. There are people out there who want that too. They're paying money
Yes,
to
you're
get
right about
cuddled
that.
or to get hugged or to get spooned. So you're not asking for too much. You're not asking the right people. If you got people that saying that's a lot, you want to do all of this before I can, or before we can, not the person. So I say the biggest thing that you should focus on right now is really trying to understand the fuel for that fire or the lack thereof. That's what I say.
And that's very well said, because you're right. And a lot of people are searching, just want to be held, cuddled, and I think they call what, professional cuddlers. out there, if I'm not mistaken. So it is like that's something that people are missing, and it's just like without that, I forgot how you put that because you put your words so elegant, like
Oh, you didn't see me looking up and pausing and doing all that to try to
you
think
could,
like, okay, how do I use how do I, because I want to find the right words, and sometimes you can't find the right words, and that's okay. But just because you can't find the right words doesn't mean that people don't understand where you're coming from. And I definitely get what you're saying. I feel like you're communicating it in a way that the message is coming across.
yes, that there's like there's no pressure in it. It's just like, look, this is what it is. But I totally 100% agree.
And I say, look for groups. There, I know there, and even if you feel like some of the titles that we used earlier may or may not, relate to you. What's the harm in finding an asexual group and learning more about that group? What's the problem in finding a demisexual group? There are groups everywhere that will allow you to do the research necessary to find what best resonates with you, and then learn how to open yourself up and be present in those spaces. And not only that, but encounter people who feel the same way. Right. So let me just say this: when we're single, right, and we want to date, what do? We go to places where there are other single people. We go to the internet, Tinder. We go
Yep.
to singles. We go to the place where the people who likely want the same thing we want are. What's the difference in you doing that?
There's
Find
no
your group,
difference.
find your tribe.
And like I'll say to just find people or find groups to understand more about it. I know I have used what Meetup, where they have
Yep,
meetup, I think it's meetup.com, where you can find different groups just for about everything, just trying to, even if you're just trying to look into like, hey, like you said, what's
everything.
asexual or this, or because I use it for everything, like to find out where the anime people are congregate, where the gamers congregate, and music
Yeah,
art people, because it gets you around in that setting of like-minded individuals to understand more than what you know. So
yep,
that's one way that I do use Meetup as that tool to like, hey, I want to meet people and also get more understanding on what's going on. And I think she could use that as a really good tool just to get out there and get basically be around people and get her questions answered or just get more information about it. And
yep,
then if she needs to take that information to, like I said, therapist or life coaching and just to dive more into it, she can.
absolutely. Definitely. And there was another piece to the question, because she kind of pointed out the fact that she's heterosexual, but now she's feeling like the sex of the person doesn't matter because her desire really is the connection. And so I kind of want to touch on this lightly and lovingly. So when you say the sex of the person no longer matters, you may also be entering a more fluid space where connection leads, but not necessarily the label. And it doesn't mean that you have to go, okay, well, now because I'm connected to this person and they happen to be of the same sex, am I now gay? Or, and not that, if that is what's happening, that's what's happening, and we can unpack that. But what I'm saying to you is that you may just be entering a more fluid state or a more fluid space. And it's not you. I don't want you to feel like you're betraying who you are or who you believe you are, or worse, who people believe you are. You're becoming more of who you are authentically at the core of who you are. And it may be that you never go down the physical sexual path with this person, but you get to experience that absolute beautiful place of intimacy, love, and connection that you've been looking for. And it may never progress to the physical, but if it does, don't feel like you now have to question who you've been. You now have to second guess everything, or you have to justify it or try to explain it to other people who just don't understand it. Just allow yourself to be who you are. For me, that's where the healing comes in, I believe.
And I agree with that.
And we gave you some stuff, like some titles and stuff like that, but you are the person who should define your intimacy language, not us. We were just trying to give you some paths to research, to investigate, to try to determine what may help you understand more about what it is that you're feeling. Since your question was, what do you call someone who craves deep emotional intimacy and companionship and not sex? So we just wanted to give you some information to kind of investigate and explore. So I wanted to just kind of make sure I touched on everything. Did we leave anything out with regard to the question, fellas?
I don't think we did. However, if there are more questions, um, of course, we may do some more unpacking of the sexual, you know, getting what you want from the opposite or the same sex, and that you think that you should get from the opposite sex. We may unpack that a little bit more on
Yeah.
our next episode. However, I think the biggest thing is finding out who are you at your ultimate core of your being. Who are you? And we all need to do that self work. Hard work is hard work, right? We talked about that
Yeah.
last
Hmm.
week.
I like that.
Um, we have to really take that time, be by ourselves. Get in that space and where we're quiet and we're thinking and uh, just experiencing what's going on with us. And we don't take time to do that. We don't take
Yeah.
time to do that.
A
Right.
lot of us don't. A lot of us don't. So we're at 57 minutes and we're almost at our 1 hour. Do you fellas have any closing statements, if you will, any closing advice, suggestions?
Yes, I'll say that I've heard this around. I heard this a lot. People come in your life sometimes for a reason, for a season, and for us to either learn something or teach us something. So I would say just don't be so harsh on yourself. Be open and allow yourself just to be human, and just unpack everything that you're feeling, and don't put it in a box and put it away,
Right.
because that's something you don't want to do, that will hinder you on on this healing journey process of yours. So just allow yourself to feel all these emotions, unpack it one at a time, and just be kind to yourself.
Yeah, definitely. How about you, Antoine?
Well, just remain to being conscious and aware of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions. What's going on with you, because your body, you believe it or not, your body tells you a lot about who you are as a person. It don't tell you a lot, but it definitely gives you clues to there's something going on, right? There's emotional shift happening because of these outside stimulus, or somebody said something, or this, that, and the other. And we need to start being aware of those things and start unpacking those things. So I'm a firm believer that what we are hold on in our past will show up in our present if we don't let it go.
Yeah, I second that emotion. And I'll say, as we close, what I really want you to sit with is, what would your dream relationship look like if sex wasn't on the table, or if sex was never expected and only deep connection was, or emotional safety and or soul level companionship? I want you to think about that and what that looks like, and write it down, speak it out loud, say it to yourself in the mirror, because that kind of love is real love. You just have to know you're worthy of it. And once you understand what it is you really are asking for, because if there's still a lot of uncertainty, there's something you want, you're just not sure in its entirety what it is that you're asking for and what you're looking for. Once you get that, you can then make your request, and there are people who will meet that request. So that's all I have in the way of advice. I want to thank everybody, especially Antoine and Joe DeRoe, for rocking with us tonight, and everybody giving their input and expertise. So thank you. This is our series, Trauma from Everyday Encounters, just things that we may not expect to be traumatic to us. Tonight, we are unpacking intimacy when sex isn't the goal. And based on the question and some of the information, we're likely going to revisit a different part of this conversation and maybe go down a different road with some of what was shared with us next week. So I want you to tag a friend. I want you to share the episode. I want you to use the hashtags HEALn HELP, hashtag Drulix, so that we know that you are sharing the message and that you're making help and support available to those who may not be able to get it otherwise. So that's all I have tonight. Again, I'm Jay the Heal Commence, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Take care now.
I gotta do my little heart.
That's right.
Love y'all.
Later, though.
Bye.
Every time I gotta choose, I can't choose nobody